Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome, PR Maven Nation, to this week's episode, one of our mini episodes, a quick and informative look at some of the important lessons I have learned as a podcaster. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven. I have been working in PR throughout my long career, and I have a special interest in personal branding. It's what makes you stand out from others who do the same thing you do and attracts people who need what you have to offer. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and a columnist for the Forbes Agency Council and Main Biz. My audiences have said that helping them think about their superpower has changed the way they think about their careers and their lives. I hope you like this episode, and I hope you'll share it with people who might be interested in hearing it. This week, I'll be sharing my Forbes Agency Council article entitled Important Lessons Learned as a Podcaster. So let's dive right in. Did you know there are millions of podcasts, or that nearly 80% of U.S. adults listen to them? You don't need me to state the obvious. Podcasting is big business. What's less obvious is how to succeed as a podcaster. Which topics resonate most with your target audience? Who is your target audience? Which formats are most popular? And how often should you release a new podcast? Who should you interview, if anyone? I've been podcasting since 2018, long before the COVID-19 pandemic took podcasts to new heights. When I first started podcasting, it was a concept with unknown opportunities or limitations. The potential of podcasting seemed limitless, but it wasn't apparent that it could even become a big business, even on an individual level. Over the years, my podcast has evolved in different ways, gaining new listeners and introducing them to a wide range of interesting guests. I have now released more than 250 episodes, many of them interviews with thought leaders in different industries. From Instagram and LinkedIn basics to using ChatGPT and the future of artificial intelligence, I have learned so much from my merry band of interviewees, and hopefully my listeners feel the same way. Your listeners will lead the way. As a podcaster, it is imperative to take stock of your past episodes and figure out how they performed. An episode is a proof of concept one way or the other. It can either show you what works or warn you about what doesn't work. Every time an episode is released, it essentially serves as cold, hard data, and the numbers don't lie. Once you unpack the research, the findings can be instructive for the future. Perhaps your episodes on social media are the most popular, meaning that you should double down and release more of them. Maybe the ones on the newspaper industry resonate less, requiring a strategic pivot to another subject matter. Whatever the case may be, always listen to your targeted audience. They will help you determine the right content. Sometimes podcasters can be creative and give people what they didn't even know that they needed. But more often than that, listener feedback is the best way to determine your creative direction. Keeping my own listeners in mind, I often go back through older episodes and use them as a blueprint for future ones. This process leads me to a logical question. What did that one do so well? For example, two of my most popular episodes featured Lieutenant Tim Cotton from the Bangor Police Department in Maine. A veteran police officer, Lieutenant Cotton, has a fondness for upholding the law with a sense of humor, so he is an ideal podcast guest. I asked myself, why are these episodes so popular? And I learned an important lesson. A guest's personality can be the difference between success and failure. The Tim Cotton episodes performed so well because he brought a large, engaged audience with him from Facebook, but also because he so willingly and generously shared links to the podcast through his own social media platforms. In the process, Tim Cotton's fans became my listeners. What I heard from his fans who tuned into the podcast was that they had never actually listened to the sound of his voice. They had only read his written content on Facebook. Many of his fans were interested in hearing the sound of his voice, and so they naturally came to my podcast. Not all guests have the same impact, even if they're popular on their own. For instance, I have interviewed other people with massive followings, but they weren't necessarily committed to sharing the podcast episode with their audience. Because there was no follow-up, they didn't boost the listener numbers. Our potential was not realized. This brings me to the key lesson. If you're a podcaster who invites guests for your interviews, you need to vet them thoroughly. Do your due diligence beforehand. Make sure that your interviewees will share your podcast with their own unique audience, just like Lieutenant Cotton did. That's how your audience grows, reaching people who didn't know about you before. Similarly, if you're invited on another podcast, it behooves you to share that podcast link with your own audience. Do it willingly and generously, and don't be selfish. Podcasting is mutually beneficial when there is an audience overlap. After all, many people listen to multiple podcasts. The spirit of giving is the spirit of podcasting. That's the best way to live life and gain new listeners too. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget, as a listener of this show, you can get the first chapter of my book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, for free. Just visit prmaven.com/giveaway and sign up for our email list to receive the first chapter. Now here are Lori Doobie and Tyler Gaudette to share how Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand has helped Sprague and Curtis Real Estate. Have a great day, PR Maven Nation.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow, and so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.